Hey, welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about your pricing strategy. And this is one of those topics that not many people talk about. And, when we all get into business or entrepreneurship and we enter a niche or an industry, we tend to just adopt kind of like industry practice. What everybody else is doing when it comes to their pricing strategies. But if you really think about it, pricing strategy can be one of those things that make the difference between becoming a massive, massive success in your industry and just getting by. All right. So we're going to go into this a little bit. I'm going to explain exactly what a pricing strategy is. And we're going to go over just about four different types of pricing strategies today that I see quite often, and you could take a few pointers from it. But before we get into that, I wanted to say thank you for joining me today. All right, these sessions are not meant to be incredibly long. These are kind of just a way for me to, one, put my thoughts and my ideas to paper, so to speak, and to help you be able to grow and scale your business so it does not rely on you. I speak with a lot of business owners. I've been around a lot of business owners over the years. I've been doing this for roughly 13, 14 years. So I've seen a lot, I've talked to a lot of people, and I see the challenges that are present in everyday business and business ownership and just the entrepreneurship journey. And I firmly believe that every one of us got into business because we thought we would be able to control our time more. We would have more freedom. We'd have more time to be able to go and spend with our families, go on vacations, the things that make life life. But far too often, our businesses begin to start owning us instead of us owning our business. And quite often, it's not a very high paying job. And we sacrifice over and over and over again, but we can't seem to get out of it. We can't seem to actually build the type of business that we once dreamed of. So that's why I'm here sharing these sessions. And for a long time, for many years, I did not want to be on camera. I did not want to create content because I feared that I would become one of those 20-year-old gurus that we all see online, the ones that preach about how to grow your business, how to become a better person, whatever it might be, a life coach, a business coach, but they're 20 years old. And even though sometimes they might say something that's pretty true, we still look at them like, you haven't been around long enough. You still don't understand. Just because you read a book doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, you know? And that kind of always held me back. So I'm starting now to put out what I've witnessed, what I know, what I've learned, what I've earned over the years of practicing this and learning and investing in coaches and mentors and courses. So I've spent a lot of money there. And so, yeah, I'm just here to help you now. And hopefully at least one of you will get some value from these sessions. I'm going to try to do these every single day, talking about a different topic. All right. So let's get into this. So we're talking about pricing strategy today. Let's look it up. What is a pricing strategy? It's defined as a pricing strategy is a plan a company uses to determine the optimal price for its products or services. You have to consider factors like your costs, market demand, competition, and customer perception. That last one, a lot of people do not actually focus on, is customer perception. One thing that I mentioned when I first started here today was that the majority of us get into an industry or a niche and we just adopt what's already there. That is called competitive pricing, and that's one of the things that we're going to go over. But it's much more complicated than that, especially if you want to become successful. There's so many different types of pricing strategies. We're only going to go over four today. And I'm going to go over an example of a company, a famous company that everybody knows, that actually changed in a way their business model, their pricing strategy, and now they're probably one of the biggest companies in the world. Adapt it to a way where you could actually understand this because it was a business model pivot, but when you look at it, it's really a pricing strategy as well. So a pricing strategy is also a method for deciding what a product or service should cost, balancing profitability with customer satisfaction. So again, pricing strategy can be the very difference between you becoming ultimately successful and you simply just breaking even. All right. So the four that we're going to go over is one, let me go back to it right now. We're going to go over value-based pricing, competition-based pricing, cost-plus pricing, and dynamic pricing. So value-based pricing, for one, is where you set your prices according to what consumers think your product is worth. This really goes down to your sales ability. If you could tie, rather than your product being tied to your cost, which we'll go over cost plus. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's go over cost plus first, because I think this is where a lot of us are. And so cost plus, this is very simple. It's where you take the product production cost, what it costs you to make the product yourself, and then you add a certain percentage to it. So a lot of contractors do cost plus pricing. A lot of manufacturing, supply chains, they take their costs and they just add a markup to it. So if it costs me $100 and I put a 20% markup, I'm going to sell it to you for $120. Okay, that's very, very simple. So usually when people get into a business such as construction, they just take what industry standard is, cost plus 20, cost plus 30, whatever it is. So the value-based pricing is completely opposite of that. So with value-based pricing, you don't set it based on just your cost plus a percentage. You actually have to take into consideration what your customers actually think it is worth to them. All right, that is a huge difference. So if you can, in your presentation, in your sales pitch, whatever it may be, paint the picture in their mind that they are going to get a lot more value from it, then you could essentially raise your prices because of the very fact that you will now paint a picture so high in their mind. Yeah, there was, I forget who it was, but there was a sales coach that I was recently listening to that said, you need to tie everything back to a price, a cost, what it costs them. Even if you're a life coach, you need to be able to tie your offer back to a number, back to a monetary value for your customers so they could see what they're missing out of by not investing, say, in your coaching, in your life coaching. Find out how much money they're missing out on by not doing this. So by not hiring you, by not, hiring you to be their coach, even if you're just a coach, a life coach, because we often tie a business coach to a monetary value. Yeah, you're going to bring up my revenue by X amount. I could see that. But if it's something that is not necessarily tied to a monetary value, we need to be able to find a way. So then if I could say, hey, by not being, your best levels, and you're missing out on $100,000 in revenue every year because you're not operating at your optimal levels. And if I could find a way to tie that back, now my coaching that's $25,000 almost seems like nothing, because I will then return to you $100,000 because you're going to be able to perform at a better level. Something very simple like that. So that could be value-based pricing, tying your offer to a higher value, not just cost plus, but a value that your customers can actually see and believe. All right. So that's value-based pricing. So we went over cost plus, that's value-based. Now let's go over competitive pricing. So this is exactly what I said before. When you use a competitive pricing strategy, you're setting your prices based on what the competition is charging. So this is often when you're a startup, when you first enter a niche, this is very simple to do. You just look at what your competitors are doing, and you do exactly what they did. But this is often like cost plus pricing, where it doesn't have a lot of room for growth. Because if you stick there, your competitors that move away from that competitive pricing will essentially leave you in the dust and start, running circles around you, and you're not going to understand why. This is where I said your pricing strategy can be the very difference between just getting by and becoming a massive, massive success. So if you stick with what your competitors are doing, there's not much room for growth other than you having to go out and constantly finding new customers, investing a whole lot more money in marketing and advertising, and entering new markets, which are great strategy. Entering a new market is a great strategy. But it's often the most expensive sale that you're going to get is by investing in marketing and advertising and trying to get new customers. Cost to acquire customers have just been going up over and over the last few years. So if you could find a way to generate more revenue without having to spend more money on marketing and advertising, I think that's a win-win for everybody. And that's exactly what I'm here to try to help you do. And then lastly, we're going to go over dynamic pricing. So this is, so dynamic pricing. In some industries, you can get away with constantly changing your prices to match the current demand for the item. All right. So a very popular and a very famous idea or company behind this is like Uber. They have dynamic pricing or demand pricing based on the time of day, your geographic location. It is constantly changing. I mean, Airbnb does the exact same thing. Dynamic pricing. Weekends are typically higher for an Airbnb than your weekdays are. So it's not just a flat fee, so dynamic pricing. That's a little bit more challenging to kind of go over. Obviously, changing market conditions. Obviously, if your prices go up, that's a way of dynamic pricing in your customers' eyes. Or if your prices go down and you drop your prices, in a way, it looks like that, but it's much more complicated than just, oh, my costs went up, so my prices are going to go up. My costs went down, my prices are going to go down. It's much more different than that. This is really demand. So if you're a supplier and you have a lot of orders coming in because it's summer, and then so essentially you could raise your prices just because it's a high demand season versus winter and you're up north and not many customers are hiring you. So then you lower your prices to kind of beat the demand because it's so low. So you want to entice more people. So it's more closer aligned to that than simply my costs went up, so my prices are going up. My costs went down, so my prices are going down. So in later videos, we could go over that a little bit more. We could go deeper into exactly what all these pricing strategies are on a deeper level. But right now, these are just 30,000 foot views. But I did mention that I wanted to go over a company that changed their pricing strategy in a way. They changed their business model, and now they're an incredibly successful company. And that is obviously the story of Netflix. And last week I wrote about it in my newsletter. I have a newsletter that goes out every Monday morning. So if you want, just click on the link in my bio and you could go and check it out. But here's the story of Netflix, because it began as a DVD by mail rental service in 1997. And then it went to Blockbuster to try to sell to Blockbuster. We all know Blockbuster turned it down, and today Blockbuster is kind of no more. Netflix became this huge streaming business because they saw where the market was going, heading in the direction of streaming online. Obviously, the internet was getting even more popular and bigger, and there's apps online and apps on phones and things like that. In 2007, Netflix introduced its streaming service, allowing subscribers pay on a monthly basis to get Netflix. So a recurring revenue stream is a way of pricing strategy. If you could find a way to add a recurring revenue stream to your business, that is a different pricing strategy, and it's more predictable. Often when we stick to these other pricing strategies, the first of the month, we always start from zero. Recurring revenue fixes that, where at the beginning of the month, you are not starting from zero, taking churn into consideration and things like that. but we have a good starting place where we're not always starting from zero. That's why I'm a huge proponent of finding a way to create a recurring revenue stream in your business by adopting or integrating different products or services, whatever it might be, that also provide value to your customers, but getting recurring revenue in your business. Today, obviously today, Netflix is a huge success, multi-billion dollar company because they were able to see where the market was going and they changed in a way their pricing strategy to adapt to that and take advantage of a market shift, right? So that's just a little bit about pricing strategies from a 30,000 foot view. I hope you got some value from this. And until tomorrow, let's see, tomorrow we are going to be talking about it's Workflow Wednesdays. So it's about how you could achieve operational efficiency and scalability. So this is where you can build and grow a business that doesn't rely on you, that can grow and scale without you. So we're going to be talking about streamlining your business processes for efficiency. Again, just 30,000 foot view, but I'll give you a couple little thoughts or things to think about, a couple strategies here and there to try to give you as much benefit as I can. So until tomorrow, I'll see you there.